Hey everybody, Mike here from MLive.com, joined by Nate Atkins. It's been a long few days. We're 7 rounds in. It's been 9 picks for the Lions. Interesting draft in the books for Detroit. Started with Jared Davis, and it's been 9 picks, 6 defensive, 3 offensive. Nate, what's your initial blush, your initial reaction to what the Lions did this year?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is just the fact that they wanted to go after playmakers in this draft. I mean, they didn't go to the offensive or defensive lines until the 6th round, and then they got, the 2 defensive ends there at the end. But they were going all at linebacker, at cornerback, at wide receiver, at tight end. Bob Quinn wasn't lying when he said they need playmakers on both sides of the ball. And a lot of us, we stepped back and we thought they got to try and get, turnovers or get a pass rush to get those turnovers. He went right at specific traits, whether it's instincts, whether it's ball skills, whether it's guys who can score in the red zone. And he went at that early and often, and only at the very end of the draft did he sort of flesh it out. So I think the plan he kind of put out there early on that, that we all heard him say multiple times, it finally came through in this draft.
Yeah, I think 2 things stood out to me. One was the lack of a running back. We wrote for weeks and weeks about this running back class because they had done so much work on it, on researching these guys, and they took none. They took 0. I mean, they got one in undrafted free agency, but no draft picks. So I think that speaks to the confidence they have in Ameer Abdul and Theo Riddick. I think the additions of Rick Wagner and TJ Lang up front, as well as Darren Fells, the blocking tight end, they believe that's enough to jumpstart the running game. And then you've got the return to health of Ameer Abdul and Theo Riddick. I think they think that'll be enough. But the second thing that stood out to me too is Bob Quinn talked a lot about best player available. And I think they went in that general direction, but if you look at the draft picks, there's a lot of needs being addressed particularly early. And you got the linebacker in the first round, Jared Davis. That's the biggest need you had coming into the draft. You had some options there in the first round. They went with the linebacker. It made sense, but plugged a hole. Second round, you get a cornerback. There were some long-term needs there, and got their guy in Tease Tabor. Third round, got a receiver, which they desperately needed, especially if they don't believe Anquan Bolden is going to come back. And that's the sense I get from the draft and from the people that I've talked to. I think Bolden's going to weigh his future. Anything is possible, but I think at this point it's unlikely that he's back. So you needed a starting caliber receiver. You needed somebody who could do some damage in the red zone, finish off some drives. 21 touchdowns in 26 games for Kenny G, as I like to call him. I can't pronounce or spell his last name. Certainly does the trick, and so that's a big takeaway I took from this draft from Bob Quinn.
Yeah, he definitely went right after the needs, and that's the interesting thing about the draft is GMs all the time say it's best player available. Well, sometimes best player available at the position of need. And you saw the Lions, they didn't take anybody that felt like, even in the slightest way, a luxury pick until probably Brad Kaya there in the 6th round when they went for a quarterback who'd fallen down. And that's when Bob Quinn said, at some point you pull the trigger on a guy that just keeps falling and he's there. It's easy to do that in the 6th round, not so much in the first couple. And the Lions came into this draft with a couple of areas they had to get better at to take the next step. Linebacker was a very clear one, having guys who can cover people on the backfield and guys who can score in the red zone without Anquan Bolden, as you said. So I think he kind of realized, you want to get the best player available, but at positions that you have to fix or you're not going to be able to compete with the best teams in the league.
Yeah. I was struck by the cornerbacks they took. I mean, they returned everybody from last year, everyone of importance. Then they bring back, they signed DJ Hayden, and then they go out there and they draft Tease Tabor in the 2nd round. They think he's going to play and compete with Neville Austin pretty early on. And then you go back out there and draft another cornerback, Jamal Agnew, later in the draft, 6th round, I believe. And so he's a little guy, 5'9". He's going to be a slot guy. He's going to compete with Neville Austin there. That's pretty apparent. Seeing his film, I really thought he was going to be, a factor on special teams, perhaps on punt return, and maybe we will. It's something that he did at San Diego. But when we asked about Bob Quinn about that, he had said that he needs a lot of development, a lot of work, catching the ball. If you look at some of his moves on YouTube, it's exciting stuff. I think you can see the potential that's there. But some of the moves he was pulling off too, it was FCS level moves. It's stuff you can't do at the NFL. Perhaps that's the growth curve that Bob Quinn's talking about. But the depth they have at cornerbacks. I mean, someone's getting cut that we know about. Alex Carter. I think he's done in Detroit. There's some ramifications that are going on at cornerback. It will be very interesting to see who wins those jobs.
Yeah, cornerback's a fascinating spot because it's not a position that I looked at for next year as they've got to go get guys right now, but they got a lot of expiring contracts there and in safety. They've got Nevin Lawson, DJ Hayden, Johnson Batamosi at cornerback, both starting safeties. So they're kind of planning long term with this, and that's exactly what I think Agnew is they realize he's not ready to play. The 4.3 speed, you can't pass on that. They wanted to get one guy, I think, to really compete early on. That's why they got Tease Tabor. They're in the second round. That was the pick that I think raised the most conversation because it was just kind of out there at the time. I mean, he's a big name everyone knew about, but you just thought he was going to fall because of those 40 times at the combine. Later at his pro day, I mean, he slipped a 4.77 at his pro day, which
I could run. I think you and I could run 4.77.
Yeah, even after all we ate here at the draft. I mean, that's for some players that takes you completely off a board. And his difference is he was such a good college player, so it wasn't going to happen. But I looking at the value wise, he's a good player. He had great tape. He had bad 40 time. I think the value might have been okay there. It just was surprising to see them do it with how many good cornerbacks there were coming off the board then. And it just was surprising that they didn't trade back at any point. They wanted to go get their guy, and their guy was Tease Tabor. So they roll in the dice.
And I think that shows some swagger, if you will, from Bob Quinn. I mean, that shows a lot of confidence in his own scouting ability because the 40, I mean, I think he could have dropped into the third round. And there's a run on cornerbacks right after he went. So I'd be curious to know if he would go in that run or if teams prefer other guys because, I mean, it was a really slow 40 time. But Bob Quinn, I mean, he told, I'd asked him about just the film and stuff like that, and he had said that he watched more film on Tease Tabor than perhaps any prospect in his career. I mean, he's done this for 20 years or whatever now, so that's really saying something. But he wanted to understand the slow 40 and whether he was actually slow, and if you miss something on tape, or if the tape would tell you something that you didn't see in the 40, and he just wanted to figure out. And he said he's game fast. There's no concern there, and he's going to play. He can play well. I think he's really Bob Quinn is really staking himself as a film watcher, as an evaluator of talent on this pick a little bit because I don't think other teams would have had him as highly. I think they're concerned about the 40. Quinn didn't have those concerns. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, it certainly will. And the thing is, Quinn worked forever as a scout. This is only his second year actually being the guy to pull off the trades. So that's one where I think his film work, if this ends up being a good pick in terms of Tease Tabor's a good player, the film work will be the reason. He put time in that I'm willing to bet teams, I highly doubt other teams are watching 14 games of this guy. I mean, in this many cornerbacks, they take him off the board. So it could have been one where they could have traded back maybe a little bit and gotten him. So it's a risky pick, but if it works, they've got a guy opposite Darius Slay, and that's not too bad.
9 players in this class for the Lions. Nate, who's the player in this class you're most excited to watch on a football field?
I mean, it's an easy pick. It's Jared Davis. I mean, I mocked him to the Lions. I'm fascinated by the speed, the explosiveness he has there, just how passionate he plays. I mean, they didn't have anything at linebacker that was playmaking ability last year. And I'm not sure how quickly he comes out, but just to kind of see a guy who's that big and strong, move that fast, and jump that high, if he could stay healthy and get on the field, I'm excited to see what that does against other running backs and tight ends and stuff like that.
For me, I think, and I alluded to him before, but Kenny Galladay makes the cut for me. I mean, he's a massive receiver. I actually watched some tape on him because I like big receivers, and when I was prepping for the draft and stuff, I'd watch some of these guys, and Galladay was one of the guys, and he has some good tape, interesting tape. He's not a fluid route runner at this point. He rounds some routes off. There's some inconsistencies there, and he's going to have to work on those. But he's 6'4", and he's not slow. He runs pretty fast for a big guy. He finishes in the red zone. It's a guy I think is a good fit, but I'm just intrigued with the skill set of what he can bring to Detroit. For you, what was maybe the biggest surprise pick?
I just said is Tease Tabor for me was the one that just jumped out because there were so many other good corners. I really felt confident they would take one there. Tabor I didn't think would be a second round pick. How about you?
Agreed. Yeah, I don't have to dwell on the point. It's just a big surprise, especially that early. How about maybe most under the radar pick? Maybe a guy that everyone's not talking about, but someone that fans should look out for.
I'm going to say I like the Brad Kaya pick a lot. I mean, that's the one that
you went there.
We'll see how much they like him with some of the rumbles that always come up with quarterbacks. But I just love the philosophy of taking a quarterback who's really talented, who kind of falls there late in the draft, even when you don't need him at all. You don't need him to play. It's what New England does. That's how Jimmy Garoppolo is now at a point where teams are willing to give up first-round picks or inquire at least about it. It's just a smart way to build some draft capital there. When you have Matthew Stafford, you're going to lock him up long-term. Yeah. Could be a good potential trade option. How about you?
Yeah, for me, it's Jamal Agnew, the 5'9" cornerback. I mean, you bring everyone back, you sign DJ Hayden, you draft T. Stable in the second round, and then you draft another cornerback. I mean, they obviously see something in this guy that they think that can compete in an environment like that. I'm not sure if it's special teams. I'm not sure if it's in the nickel. But I think, Quandre Diggs' days in Detroit might be numbered. And I think, I'm not sure if he plays this year or not. There's some work he needs to have to his game. But 48 pass breakups in his career, I think 11 or 12 interceptions. I mean, this guy was all over the ball. He was sticky and covered, and he's extremely fast. So
that's not FCS speed there. That's real unbelievable.
And so
speed.
He comes from that level, so there's going to be a growth curve. I'm not sure how much you'll see from him in 2017, but I'm intrigued by him. Dad late in the draft. There's an intriguing skill set, clearly a ball hawk. Very interesting pick.
Yeah, for sure.
It's getting late in the night. We're probably well past the time our bosses want us to be doing videos. But it's been an interesting draft. 6 defensive players for the Lions, 3 offensive players. You got Jared Davis, a day one linebacker. I think they checked a lot of boxes in this draft. Rookie mini camp's coming up. OTAs are coming up later this month. In May rather. This stuff never stops. We'll be all over it. For Nate, I'm Kyle. We're M Live. Keep it right here.